Oh, okay. Okay, can you take your seats? We're going to start. Please turn off your phones. I would like to remind you that we are streaming this. So at any point, if anyone wants to ask questions, please use the side microphones, okay? So good morning. Welcome to the 7th Research Data Alliance Plenary. We are delighted to be here in Tokyo this morning, and I am very honored and have the pleasure of introducing our speakers this morning. So the first speaker is Mark Parsons, he's the Research Data Alliance Secretary General.
Thanks, Hillary. Konnichiwa. Yokoso. Welcome. So here we go again. It's a huge honor, privilege to stand up here every 6 months and tell you all, the leaders of the data revolution, if you will, those that really make data work. So it's really an honor to stand up here and sort of give you my perspective on what I think is going on, because it's something I'm always thinking about. What is RDA really doing in the big picture? And how can I support more individuals, more organizations to get actively involved? So I always like to start things off by reminding us of our mission. And we build these social and technical bridges that enable the open sharing of data. The social and technical bridges. Wonderful metaphor. So it's appropriate that with this plenary that we are bridging to a new continent. And so I really want to thank the local organizers. This has really been a big leap for us. Hillary, of course, is the queen of all plenaries. She's always great, but in this case, the local organizers were really the main driver. Extremely organized, and I think it's reflected in the growth of Asian participation that we're seeing in RDA. We've gone from about 4% of our membership being from Asia to 9% over the last 6-9 months. So I think that's great. I think it's also really critical to recognize the role of JST in making this possible. Ogasaka-san, Tsunamatsu-san, and I think especially Otaki-san have really been marvelous and in getting this going. And while JST has been the prime sponsor, AIST, NICT, NII have all been key supporters. It's really been a partnership. And I especially want to acknowledge Yasuhiro Murayama. I've known Murayama-san for a number of years now, and I've really admired his tireless and successful efforts to bring more data coordination to Japan. And of course, we mustn't forget Satoshi Sakaguchi, our honored council member, who has also played a key role here. And the influence of these gentlemen, I think, is really clear because we have an excellent slate of keynote speakers coming today and Wednesday. We're privileged to have speakers representing the Japanese cabinet. And I detect a bit of policy discussion. Certainly we saw a lot of that in the symposium yesterday. And I think this is really interesting. In the last 6-12 months, I've been hearing more and more from government officials around the world as the need for more policy guidance, feedback, and making data sharing as fair and productive as possible. Well, but RDA is not really a policy organization. We're creators, implementers of data infrastructure. But the policymakers really need to hear our voice. And so maybe we can be thought of as sort of a policy testbed, a voice from the community on what really works in action. And the title of this conference is Making Data Sharing Work. And that's also been the focus of, I give a lot of talks over the course of the year, and it's been the focus of my talks in saying that open data is not enough. We need this underlying infrastructure. So I think this is really, it's an appropriate linkage between the policy and the infrastructure. So, but back to the bridges. As a geographer, I often think about bridging across scales. And a theme that I've been emphasizing locally lately, is the need to play globally and locally. It's kind of a contrived word, but you actually see it in the literature. And it's not just simply think global, act local. It's play in both spaces at the same time, working at the global and the local and the regional levels at the same time. And I think Japan has been doing a lot of that in the last year, working locally to move Japan data issues forward while also engaging with RDA. Japan is now the 7th most represented country in RDA. And I think other countries are finding this to be also a good approach. You know, work at that local level with your local issues, but at the same time play at the global and make sure that they're talking to each other. But it's not just geographic scale, it's also disciplinary scale, if you will. And RDA has a growing number of disciplinary groups. Toxicogenomics, I think that might have been our first one, structural biology, other life sciences, biodiversity, history and ethnography, oceanography, materials data, photon and neutron science, and starting this plenary, a chemistry interest group. And I'm sure I've forgotten several. And so these disciplinary groups have been working hard to bring disciplinary perspectives into RDA, and then also bringing RDA concepts to the disciplines, engaging the actual researchers, if you will. The metadata groups, there's several metadata groups, have been really one of the leaders in this sort of bridging area in trying to detect commonalities and differences in disciplinary needs in metadata. And this was actually a theme of the last working group, interest group meeting a few months ago. Another group, the agricultural interest group, I think has been just an exemplar of how to play locally within a discipline. For at least the last 2 plenaries, they have met right before the plenary in collaboration with the Global Open Data for Agricultural and Nutrition Initiative, a new partner of RDA. So they work together before the plenary to sort of plan their strategy. And they make very deliberate decisions on when they will work with existing RDA groups on sort of generic type issues, when they need to spin up a new group, the biggest example being the wheat interoperability working group, or when they need to work within their own discipline. They make those very deliberate choices and think about that very strategically. And I think that's a great way to go forward. And so their meeting yesterday, a key insight that came from their meeting yesterday was the value of bridging to Asia, in that they found that their wheat interoperability recommendation will also, with some slight modification, work for rice. So I think that's really showing how RDA recommendations are starting to get some traction. And we now have 12 formal recommendations, and you'll hear a lot more about them in the coming days. But what's even more exciting is that these recommendations are actually being adopted and used. And this is, again, through the conscious work of the working groups and interest groups. The data publishing groups also met yesterday. And the focus of that meeting was how can they work to promote the adoption of this whole suite of recommendations that they developed that you'll be hearing about in the coming days. So this focus on making the data work is working. You'll notice on our homepage that there's a whole bunch of recommendations and new groups out for comment. So please go comment. A phrase I heard recently that really resonates with me is the notion of co-production of knowledge. How working together you produce greater insight and knowledge. Share and learn, if you will. Okay, so finally some business items that I think show that RDA is maturing. The RDA Council, the body responsible for strategic oversight and sustainability of RDA, is having their first rotation of membership. A nomination committee of representatives from our funders has proposed a slate of 3 candidates. 2 you know already, as the committee recommends that Fran Berman and Ross Wilkinson continue the excellent work that they've been doing. The 3rd candidate, Jean-Bernard Minster, is really another rock star in the data world. And I've actually known Bernard for quite a number of years, and he's a tireless champion of data sharing and stewardship. He was really instrumental in revamping the world data system 7, 8 years ago, whenever it was. I think that's an excellent slate, but the slate has to be approved by the membership. And so please go to the homepage, click on the link, and indicate whether you approve of this slate of candidates. The other note of maturity is that our organizational assembly has grown to 42 organizational members and affiliates. I think our organizational assembly is actually one of the more critical groups of RDA. With our focus on implementing recommendations, it's really important that organizations adopt and implement what we're doing. Not just individuals, but organizations. If we want to have infrastructure, the organizations have to play. So now they've reached this larger number of members. At their meeting this afternoon, they will be electing a 12-member organizational advisory board, a more formal body, although the organizational assembly will still be very actively involved. But the organizational advisory board will then have that voice to council with that critical organizational voice, and also into the working groups to say, you know, are you working on something that actually we're going to use? So I think that's good. So that's it for now. I'll have much more business stuff to talk about tomorrow, and there'll be time for questions and so forth. But right now, as always, go forth, make new friends, do good work, co-produce some knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. We are honored to have Yuko Harayama, the Executive Member of the Council for Science, Technology and Innovation from the Cabinet Office in Japan.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a great honor and a pleasure to host this RDA 7th plenary in Tokyo, here in Tokyo. And I'd like to, first of all, thanks to Mr. Otake-san and his staff, GST, to make it happen. Because from the beginning, when we had started to discuss about open science and data sharing issues, and he was very engaged, strongly engaged, to promote this idea into Japanese context and to make his debates internationally. And that's why he was leading this initiative, and thank you so much. And thank to all your staff. First of all, welcome to Tokyo, to all the participants to RDA. And I think it will be a very exciting moment for you and for us, because linking all the debate into Asia. And I think we say science is global, but you are working with local people. And the challenge will be making linkage between local, and by the end, international and global. The way we advance science is drastically changing today, of course, thanks to the internet power, computational power, and storage powers, and so on and so. But at the same time, the way you team up is changing too, not only among scientists, but also ordinary citizen, engineer, and companies people, so on and so. So it's changing drastically. And the way we promote science, traditional way, from the policymaker's point of view, is funding R&D. That's it. But now, as the framework is changing, we need to have new framework to promote science. For that, it's almost impossible to really frame from the political point of view, but we need the practice on the ground in terms of data sharing, for example. And for that, you are one of the key drivers to propose and to test new way to do science. So the debate you will have today until during 3 days will be very rich, I hope, and really bringing new ideas to scientists, but also to policymakers too. I'm working for that. So everybody is moving into direction, but one step further, when you advance in new challenges, you have to address different strengths and also at the same time threats, challenges in terms of, for example, how to overcome discipline differences to set up data sharing process. And also, you need to take care of the privacy issues, in particular in medical researches. Also, by the end, you may have to address ethical issues too. So all these barriers and all the new challenges we have to address will be discussed, debate internationally. And from the Japanese framework, Japanese policy makers' point of view, we would like to share these debates and to take account of some of their discussion to translate in terms of policy framework too. So I wish all of you all the fruitful discussions and really good continuation for the next step. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Yasuo Kishimoto. He's the Deputy Director General of the Science and Technology Policy Bureau from the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology, Japan.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Deputy Director General of Science and Technology Policy Bureau of the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology, known as MEXT. As a representative of MEXT, I'm honored to say a few words to celebrate the opening of such a significant meeting as a Research Data Alliance 7th Plenary meeting. Sorry. We are very happy to be able to host the RDA 7th Plenary meeting in Tokyo. First of all, I would like to welcome all of you who have come here today, including, of course, all those involved with the RDA. I understand that the RDA is an international community organization striving to address the grand challenges of international society by facilitating among researchers and innovators the open sharing of research data across technological platforms, disciplines, and countries. This meeting serves the extremely important purpose of providing an opportunity for stakeholders to come together and arrive at a collective understanding of the trends and issues faced by each country and organization. From the perspective of Japan's contribution to international science and technology, and the fact that this is the first time that the RDA plenary meeting is to be held in Tokyo, in Japan, I believe this meeting is extremely significant. At present, with the global prevalence of the internet and the enhanced profile of innovation in information and communication technology, we are in the midst of the kind of grand-scale transformation of social structure that occurs once every 100 years. Alongside new concepts such as the Internet of Things, Big Data, Industry 4.0, and AI, drastic changes in business models are being sought. How scientific and technical innovation can be realized is attracting attention as new scientific research methods using enormous amounts of data are being integrated, applied in advanced ways in the context of open science. Discussion how to advance the sharing of research results without hindering existing research activities has fundamentally and dramatically intensified. Innovative technical developments are anticipated to result from theory, experiment, and numerical simulation using the enormous amount of scientific data that have been accumulated. Such efforts have already been initiated in various disciplines, including in materials, medicine, global observation and prediction, and disaster prevention. In Japan, such subjects have come to comprise an important political issue, and have been mentioned in various government policies. The fifth Science and Technology Basic Plan, which was approved by the Cabinet in January 2016, aims towards the construction of a super smart society that can bring wealth to the people, mainly through the active use and application of science technologies related to cyberspace. This will enable our country to create new value and services. In the basic plan, we also intend to build a system to promote open science by expanding the use and application of publicly funded research results as much as possible. To facilitate innovation by actively using and applying science and technology related to cyberspace, it is important to enhance data science and open science, as aforementioned. In Japan, to further promote data science, we intend to build a common platform for research results and data that is based on rules for open science. This platform will enhance the use and application of research results obtained through public funding and will be built with international cooperation. These measures will become increasingly important as Japan pursues the goal of becoming the best-suited nation in the world for innovation. This plenary meeting is to be held under the theme of making data sharing work in the era of open science. More than 50 working sessions have been prepared in which there will be discussion on how to handle research data. I'm looking forward to active discussions with the RDA in each session and to deepening international cooperation in the interest of building a basis of scientific and technical innovation with the RDA as a center. I also highly anticipate being able to obtain knowledge useful to promote data-oriented scientific and technical research from various countries, including Japan. I would like to close my remarks by wishing that this meeting will bring fruitful results to all participants and that RDA will enjoy continued success in its endeavors. Thank you for your all kind attention.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Satoru Otake, who is from the Japan Science and Technology Agency, of course also our wonderful hosts for the plenary.
Thank you, Hilary. Good morning, everybody. My name is Satoru Otake from Japan Science and Technology Agency. First of all, I'd like to address my hearty welcome for all of you to come to Tokyo. The season is a little bit early spring, so unfortunately we cannot prepare any cherry blossom for the time being. But you can have an imagination that these areas may be full of blossoms within a couple of weeks, so you enjoy that. On behalf of local organizer JST and AIST, NII, NIST, and all the colleagues, I'd like to just say welcome and also speak a little bit about why we are inviting RDA to Tokyo. First of all, JST is a major funding agency of Japan, but not the simple funding agency, but we have a so-called strategic research agenda we pursue. So in that sense, yes, JST is one of the organizations where Japanese government science and technology policy come to be realized. So that's why we look at science in Japan, and data sharing will be quite important, and the reason I'm trying to explain from now. First of all, science is quite important, I think, both as an essential intellectual activities of human being and as an engine to realize innovation in society. So we invest not only private but the public fund in research in science in every country. Now, we are aware that those investments achieved new discovery like Higgs boson or gravitational wave. Congratulations to our colleague from US National Science Foundation. And also new innovations like stem cell or light emitting diode, which brought a lot of good things to our lives. And also new findings like global warming, which probably alert us some future happenings in the globe. But those research activity not only brought us such kind of achievement, but also brought us quite important asset. That's data. So that kind of data, a lot of effort to have cast on this kind of activity to get such kind of data. So why don't we use more widely and more wisely? So now, we decide to the theme of Plenary 7 in the era, making data sharing work in the era of open science. So open science, yesterday we have a symposium, and the open science is one of the important agenda nowadays. So open to who? Probably to society, to public, and to scientists, other scientists. But important point is that such kind of openness now is quite important even to the society. So somebody referred yesterday regarding the importance of citizen science. And the citizens nowadays, they are one of the sponsors, but maybe the greatest sponsor to the science. So in that context, some of the citizens would like to also understand and know the science, but not only understand and know, but that they would like to do science by using data. So that kind of pressures now come to be realized, and it's more and more strongly, I feel. But we have to change the way of research activities, because over 350 years, scientists do the research, taking data or observation, and then publish the scientific paper, and that's the achievement. So somebody said, publish or perish. But now, it is not enough, I think. So, yes, not only publish, but probably it should be changed into publish, be public, or perish. So, be public include probably open data. Of course, yesterday everybody discussed that not all the data can be opened. There should be privacy, there should be intellectual property, or so. But we have to think about it, how to promote data sharing from now. Because data are not private property, but nowadays in public domain. So I would like to stimulate, especially Japanese science community regarding research data sharing, because very sorry to say, but in Japan this tendency is not well apparent for the time being. So I would like to invite RDA to trigger the discussion in Japanese science community regarding research data sharing. So yesterday's symposium as one, and also I would like some of the Japanese scientists to join the discussion of data sharing, probably think together with the very difficult endeavor to realize this. So, and also, Japan achieved vast work in scientific activities, so we have data. So also, Japan, especially public sector, should think about data sharing for the contribution to the world. Of course, there should be always competition and collaboration. So these kind of things should be discussed in this forum. It is not easy because it's to change. It is to change the culture of science, which continues more than 300 years. But we try to discuss. We co-create, co-design the new world. So I'd like all of you to keep going, and this important motion activities should be continued. Finally, as I said, the main aim is that discuss our business, but this is in Japan, so why don't you enjoy cultural discoveries? Not scientific, only scientific discovery, but cultural discovery. Season is, as I said, a little bit earlier than the full of spring, but you can find a lot of cultural findings around here. Food, beverage, or other cultural event. Also, we prepare a little bit of good weather for you. So enjoy the stay in Tokyo. Finally, I'd like to appreciate the RDA people, especially RDA US, RDA EU, RDA headquarters, RDA Australia, and also Dr. Persons and Hilary Hamae, who made this event in Tokyo possible. So good discussion, good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Otake, and for your wise words. So not just scientific, but a bit of culture too. I'm afraid our next speaker was not able to join us, but he has sent a video message. Michael Hager is the head of the European Commissioner Gunther Oettinger, who is the Commissioner for the Digital Economy and Society, and Michael is his head of cabinet, and he has sent a video message for you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, konnichiwa. The Research Data Alliance meeting is a unique opportunity to build bridges between continents, confirming our strong commitment to ensure a sustainable cooperation between Europe and Asia. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you in Tokyo today, but the digital era allows me at least to connect with you. More than ever, we must join forces to address global challenges by removing barriers to international cooperation between researchers and innovators, and by establishing leading international research and innovation partnerships. The scientific and socio-economic challenges of the 21st century transcend borders, and science is increasingly global. By bringing together a unique community of data scientists, librarians, computer scientists, and policymakers, this meeting enables us to take action for shaping a better future. The future is digital. The future is data. Data makes the future. And RDA is at the core of digital transformation. I would like to congratulate the organizers of this event for choosing making data sharing work in the era of open science as the main theme of this RDA plenary. This is a timely and strategic choice. The rapid explosion of data has fundamentally changed the world of science and research. The volume, variety, and complexity of research data require significant efforts to maintain transparency and integrity in the scientific enterprise. High-performance ICT infrastructures are needed to manage the expected scale of future data flows. Adequate computing, storage, and communication resources should be available to researchers in order to fully leverage online access to data and computation. The universal nature of science requires more equitable access across all economic and social sectors. The digital revolution makes it possible to share scientific advancement and its benefits. The collective intelligence of scientific communities is now unleashed through new ways of collaborating across institutional, disciplinary, and national boundaries. Big data, cloud computing, and high-performance computing will support the uptake of the data economy and data-driven science, because the effective management of digital data is indispensable in today's research and innovation activities. Ubiquitous high-speed connectivity should reduce knowledge divides. Infrastructure should be built to achieve global interoperability, fostering cooperation between research, education, government, and industry. In Europe, the high-speed infrastructure GÉANT enables research collaboration and knowledge sharing by interconnecting research, education, and innovation communities worldwide with secure high-capacity networks. Furthermore, GÉANT collaborates globally with research and education network partners to ensure high-performance connectivity and to make a range of services available to user groups across the world, enhancing their ability to work together. With links to GÉANT, the Trans-Eurasia Information Network provides a dedicated, high-capacity data communications network for research and education communities across Asia-Pacific. Users have access to the shortest and hence fastest possible network routes for their data traffic from and to Europe, which significantly improves the performance of many applications. This fulfills both continents' wish to connect research and education communities across borders and accelerate scientific breakthroughs. GÉANT's advanced network and services enable worldwide research projects in areas as varied as climate change and environmental monitoring, food and energy supply, particle physics and radio astronomy, medicine and bioinformatics. But we need to go further. Europe will soon launch the European Cloud Initiative. The objective is to offer researchers a trusted, open environment for storing, sharing, and reusing scientific data and results. The European Cloud Initiative will provide European science, industry, and public authorities with world-class data infrastructure, cloud-based services, and the means to compete and thrive in the digital economy. Our ambition is that every research center, research project, and researcher in Europe has access to world-class supercomputing, data storage, and analysis to support research-driven innovation ecosystems. The European Cloud Initiative is part of European efforts to promote open science and to develop the necessary infrastructure to support it. We also need to develop reward mechanisms that recognize stewardship and innovation in preserving and enabling the reuse of results from research, making research results discoverable and reusable. We need to work with all relevant stakeholders of the science ecosystem to explore new models for sustainable open scientific data management. We need to work with you, RDA, on interoperability. Supporting the digital transformation of industry, public sector services, and science is our ambition. We cannot do it alone. We need to work together across the globe to ensure interoperability of data and to agree on standards. The Research Data Alliance is a timely initiative that has been able to grab the attention and the commitment of a vast community interested in the interoperation of data infrastructures. I welcome the effort of the RDA community to bring experts from different scientific and technological backgrounds to tackle the obstacles of interoperation of data and computing infrastructures. I wish you all a very good stay in Tokyo and a fruitful event. Ganbatte kudasai.
So now we have the panel discussion. I'd like to invite our panelists to join the stage, please. The panel is entitled Towards a Global Internet of Data in the Open Science Era. The members of the panel are Jean-Claude Bergelmann from the European Commission, Yoshiro Murayama from the National Institute of Information Communications Technology, Japan, Baron Moens, who's the high-level expert group on the European Open Science Cloud, the chair of that group, Mark Parsons, of course, who you saw before from the Research Data Alliance, and Ross Wilkinson from the Australian National Data Service, and Stephen Wolf from Internet2. I'd ask you, when the time comes for questions, to remind you to please use the microphones on either side of the hall. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Yasuhiro Murayama, NICT, also X World Data System ex officio. So I'm so happy to host. So Japan is happy to host the RDA Plenary 7th, and also it is an honor to open this panel session by myself. I think the video message just now was a very much good introduction to this panel session. So this session is to discuss this global research data infrastructure, which should be so seamless, interoperable, interconnected. And this panel member includes the member of the high-level expert group of the European Open Science Cloud, which was established by the European Commission last year, and chaired by Dr. Baron Moens. And I am also the non-European member. European Open Science Cloud envisions the service-driven endeavor and federated systems to support open science, to promote open science, as addressed in the message. So the the system should be the collaborative and the interconnected and the interoperable, which to aim at being a secure and global scientific research infrastructure and environment, digital environment, and hopefully to extend to the more social applications, innovations. And so this is, I believe, the first step to kick off for the future Internet of Data world. And I think we can exchange visions, views, comments between the audience and panel members. Okay. Yeah, thank you. So I will hand the microphone to the chair. Oh no, here. Okay, switch to the.
Okay, so I hope you didn't mind my screensaver. Sorry for that. So this is the presentation. So let me first start by declaring a conflict of interest. I mean, half of the table is actually involved in in our endeavor for this European Open Science Cloud. And Barend, who will speak after me, is the chair of our high-level group. And he will, so we have a kind of a traveling roadshow. So I do the political context for the European Open Science Cloud, and then he will go into the real substance of the specificities and the requirements. So let me quickly run over our initiative. I already gave a few hints yesterday of what we are doing there and why we want to do it. So I will try to stick into the 5 minutes. So that is our picture. So depending on where you are in the Commission and in Europe, you're in the cloud or you're already seeing the sun. So I hope that by this year and at the next year, as it was said by the head of cabinet of ANSIP, the commissioner, the vice president in charge of the digital single market, we will hope to cross the nebulous by the end of the year at the latest next year. Okay, so the European Open Science Cloud for the political environment for that, in order to give you the context, as I said, and as also the head of cabinet stressed several times, so it is a central piece of the DSM strategy. It's part of the European Cloud Initiative, which is a broader set of policy measures and initiatives that will be launched very soon, in particularly after the publication of our communication in April, and which will look at the broader environment of data infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, and the use of it by other communities and the scientists, so the widening of the user base. It got traction and political momentum somewhere around the spring of this year, with the publication of the DSM strategy, with our commissioner advocating for it in the Competitiveness Council, and the Competitiveness Council, which is the meeting of all the ministers which are competent for this matter, not only science, of course, but much wider, but still we got traction there. It was fully endorsed by this Competitiveness Council. And it is all, and as a result of that, it is one of the key priorities of our Commissioner for Research and Innovation, Carlos Moedas, for 2016 and beyond. So politically speaking, we have all the endorsement needed to go forward. And that is probably the first biggest hurdle which we had to take in terms of moving the dossier forward. A lot of other hurdles still exist, and Barend in particular will highlight some of them. As I said yesterday, so let me run very quickly over this. It was an idea emanating from the discussions we started in 2014 with stakeholder community, with scientists, with data specialists, with librarians, hundreds of discussions, validations, etc. It is their idea which we are bringing to the front now and which we are trying to make operational, let's say from the summer onwards. This is indeed the pivotal political moment when the Competitiveness Council in a few months ago endorsed, well, a few months, almost a year ago, endorsed the initiative and called for that. Very important for a policymaker is that also the European Parliament has endorsed it in its report of 2 months ago, the 19th of January, on the digital single market, where it fully endorsed the idea of setting up a European Open Science Cloud by the end of 2016, which gave us a little bit of a, a heartbeat, missing a heartbeat or two when we read it, but okay. So that's where it is. And I'm sure if the Parliament decided this, that we will be able to do it. But anyway, you see the construction, you see the political environment there. As I said, and as also the head of cabinet of ANSIP stressed it, we do it together with Connect. Connect is taking, DG Connect, which is our ICT DG, if you want, which is taking part of the wider picture of the digital infrastructure in Europe, and of widening the user base towards e-government, industry, and so on. So we as DG RTD concentrate on the European Science Cloud, also there together with Connect for the interoperability layers, but it is a joint initiative, and we are very pleased to be able to do that in such a way. So what is the basic idea? And that can't be stressed enough, because that's extremely important for whatever architecture, if you can call it that way, the cloud will have in the future. It must be a federation of what exists and bringing together and overcoming the fragmentation of what is available at the level of research data repositories and accessibility. And it must do this by offering ad hoc solutions, no, not ex ante. So as I said yesterday, we cannot come up with a top-down solution for a reality which is already largely there and which we have to try to bring up to a level of interoperability and not the other way around. It is the ambition to offer the 2 million almost researchers of Europe an environment, a trusted third party, as I explained yesterday, where you have free at point of use access, not free in abstractum, where there are services offered with regard to data storage, management, mining, and so on. And it has to offer, in doing so, we hope that it will offer value, and it has to offer value by bringing scale at a higher level, so that data-driven science, interoperability, interdisciplinarity, and so on, can take off. And by offering that scale, try to do some to try to leverage current and past infrastructure investments. So for today, we assume, we calculate that almost 10 billion per year is done by member states as investment in this kind of environments, and we hope that by offering this initiative, we can do some economies of scale there as well. Governance is a key issue, and Barend will certainly give some of the ideas and some of the issues that are on the table there as well, and it is probably the hardest nut to crack in the whole cloud construction. What are the key challenges for Europe? So when we did our surveys and our talking with the stakeholders, there are 5 key challenges that the cloud has to face upfront in order to become a workable and a reality. So first of all, there still is a lot of lack of awareness, if I may say so. Not, of course, in this environment of data specialists, but if you talk across the stakeholders, the scientists themselves, the universities and so on, there's still a lot of awareness of the value of data, and a lack of incentives to precisely overcome that lack of awareness. I explained it a little bit yesterday, but the reality is still like that. There are quite a significant lack of common standards for ensuring interoperability between disciplines and across the member states, which is, if you put them together in a matrix, you get a kind of an idea of the complexity. There is, as it was said several times in the speech of Mr. Hager, there is a lack of perceived hardware capacity for the computing that is needed to handle all this increase in data-driven science. There is, first and foremost, a significant fragmentation and lack of coordination over the different communities, over the disciplines, and across the countries. Of course, that goes together with the lack of interoperability. And then finally, there is, in one way or another, we need to find a way to translate the issues with regard to privacy, data protection, IPR, and so on, which are already difficult in the analog world, if I may say so, or in the non-cloud world. We have to find a way to translate that into a cloud environment, which is certainly not an easy way for Europe, as you can imagine, and for those who have followed the discussion, as you know. That I showed yesterday, so the basic components are there. Some of your comments yesterday afterwards was that you suggest that the disciplines on the left are already at the governance level. So that's not the idea, the picture I want to give. The picture I want to give you an idea that how far the different disciplines are developed with regard to accessibility and hosting and so on of data. It should stop where the level of data services and the level of governance is mentioned, and it is precisely to help us in trying to define what kind of architecture that whole environment should look like, that we have this high-level group on the cloud, which Barend is chairing, helping us and coming up with some specifications, recommendations, and so on. So, but that I will leave to him. My last slide. So, as I said, we are committed to move the whole dossier significantly ahead this year, not alone in Europe, but also at the global scale. And we must find a way indeed to address the global issues of science, of a science cloud, because science is a global issue. There are several initiatives in the pipeline. There are also several important milestones or parts of the roadmap, if you may say so, that we have before us. And in particular for this community, I draw your attention to the June and March 2017 dates where actually the call for tenders on making some of the beta versions, if you would like, of parts or broader parts of the cloud will be when the calls will be closed and issued, and you see the budget that is available there. So from my point of view, that is the kind of political setting which Brussels is working on, and I think now it is up to Barend to go into the details of how this famous or infamous picture will look like in reality. You don't need? Okay.
Good
morning. So while my slides are put up, I would like to say that I'm really excited to be here, especially since it's not Europe. Thank you. Those of you who know me for a long time know that I worked for 15 years on malaria before I became a data nerd. And I was all over the place, and I really saw how important it is to get connected to science and knowledge all over the world. So I'm particularly happy that we are now here to make that happen. I will try to be very short, go very fast, so that we have time for discussion. But any of those things that come up, of course, can be discussed later. I'm here for 2 days, so you can ask any questions later as well. So this is my favorite slide. I won't go into science today at all, but for those who are in the front and they can read, this is of course one of these beautiful art outputs of big data, but we call them now ridiculograms. And this is a term I stole from Larry Hunter, an American colleague, because we can make very beautiful things from big data, but do they really mean anything in terms of actionable knowledge? So what we really are talking about in the cloud, I think, is that we want everything that we ever said, I call that always the explicitome as a good biologist, everything that we made explicit already, and all the research objects, the workflows that work together to talk to each other and be interoperable. That's the ideal situation. This is an extreme oversimplification, obviously, of science, but if you still make new data, we never make new data, we are too lazy and too poor, I always say. We use other people's data, OPD, but, you know, some people still create data, and they want them to talk to all other data to get new insights. So basically, this is what I think open science should really do. Then, of course, more and more, we talk about mind-machine interaction, social machines, where there is distributed computing as well as centralized, where people continuously interact with the machine. So when Robert John Smits, the Director General, asked me to chair the group, and I was there the 10th of July, I never forget, I said, well, I don't think it's European, I don't think it's open, I don't think it's just for science, and certainly not a cloud in the traditional sense. But we still went on. And first of all, let us emphasize that this is something that is really, really to support open science. It's not an open cloud, it's a cloud to support open science. And not a cloud as in dump everything in Amazon.com or any other company. First of all, I want to say that when we talk open science and really, well, this is, of course, interoperability with Keynote and PowerPoint. The A disappears, but one of our problems. But we see that open science is not the same as open access articles. We really have to go to open data publishing, and I always say, well, we still allow supplementary articles to the data, but we have to publish data as a first-class citizen and deal with the data. And again, I always put this up very quickly because it's not about just big data and bigger, bigger, bigger. This is one of my favorite slides where you say you can have very big data. If I sequence 1 million people and then I sequence 2 million people, my data stewardship challenge doesn't double. I just need a bigger computer. However, if I want to cross many disciplines, I need Twitter data and environmental data and epidemiological data and data from my lab, then the individual data sets may still be relatively small, each of them, but I have a big data stewardship challenge to cross these borders. So what we have said, and then we switched to what we called the Internet of Data. And when I was in the US with my colleague Stephen Wolf there and others, we also said we really have to talk about the Internet of Data and Services. And this is from a paper that will come out very soon, and Nature Scientific Data was kind enough to provide us with a poster before it is published. You see a lot of authors there about very minimal principles as underlying the internet. And one of them is the FAIR principles, that data, as we all know, should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Obviously, nobody can be against that. But the fact that it is now highly accepted in the US, but also here, and in Europe, and hopefully all over the world, is that this is a very high-level principle. It's not a technology. So many technologies can answer to these principles, but if we stick to them, all data will become interoperable and partly also, very importantly, machine actionable. Now, this is just to scare you. This is from Rob Hoofd, my CTO. He's in the room here. This is his mind map about data stewardship. Don't try to read it, obviously. This is just to say it's not a simple thing to deal well with data. It's horribly complicated. So we have to train a lot of people. So how did we frame the European Open Science Cloud? And again, I'm happy that Shuhiro and Ross are in the group. We wanted also an American, but that's apparently not possible. But we went already there to discuss with the American colleagues. So we really want to make this completely international, and the European Open Science Cloud is obviously a contribution to that. So we want, as Jean-Claude already said, trusted access to services and systems, the reuse of shared data. Sharing is not a goal in itself, it's really the reuse of data that matters. It should go across disciplinary and geographical borders, and it is a federated system, specifically in the member states, but I think that holds for the global thing. Again, the hourglass of the internet, again, minimal international guidance and governance, maximum freedom to implement, globally interoperable and accessible, and globally embedded in a commons around data, a common good, a public common good. The Internet of Data also, by the way, includes clearly that private sector can also participate, very much like in the internet. Why not? The human expertise is put in our report as a very high level problem. We agreed that minimally 500,000 people have to be trained in Europe, and I think the Americans are talking about minimally the same number of people. It is about core resources in data, not just about hardware, standards, best practices, and of course we need the underpinning technical infrastructures. But don't think as the cloud as some giant computer infrastructure only. It's really a web of data and services. And then it supports open science, open innovation, systematic and professional data management, and long-term data stewardship, which was mentioned. I was very happy to hear that also in the video. But again, that's a very complicated system that starts with experimental design and goes through the whole data cycle. It's more than data archiving. So with that, we can discuss all these things in the panel later. I would like to give the word to the next speaker. Thank you.
So this is a very daunting title. You know, it's got global, it's got Internet of Data, it's got open science. European Open Science Cloud is a marvelous initiative. Our colleague Jim Caros, who spoke yesterday from the National Science Foundation, I'm sure can answer questions about similar initiatives going on in the US with CloudNet and Chameleon and similar activities funded and supported by National Science Foundation. But I'm not going to talk about open science. I want to talk first about the Internet of Data and just remark that, you know, the Internet has always been an Internet of data. The need, the desire to move data around, to make it more accessible, to make it easy to work with, has been a driver for technical innovation in the Internet since its very founding. Names like Van Jacobson, Tim Berners-Lee, Michelle Munson, all have contributed to advances in Internet technology. So it's always been an Internet of data. What is the driving force now? Well, I think people mostly agree that it's the sheer bulk of data. Big data, as it's called. Just the bulk of data, sensor data, the Internet of Things, which is clearly more than a marketing term nowadays. But I would like to spend a little bit of time talking about one aspect that is driving data innovation, and that is the use of data from different sources. Interoperability, the FAIR principle that Baron talked about, is extremely important, and he's right. It's pretty well accepted, I think, worldwide at this point. But interoperability is really hard, and I invite you to Google the term, the phrase, hell is other people's data. It's an illuminating, very brief article on the exigencies of trying to combine data sets. Well, I won't go on to, I won't elaborate on that, but I invite you to look at it yourself. Accessibility is a feature of FAIR that entails geography. You know, it's often said nowadays that data are so big that it has become immobile. But that's just not true. Right? That's a myth, because if I'm going to collaborate with you and I'm here and you're there, and you have your data and I have mine, then one of us has got to move the data. As Berend mentioned, there are complex workflows that are a feature of modern science. And these workflows entail numerous data sources, both initial data sources and intermediate sets of data that are generated during the workflow. This is a new way of doing science, and it is causing us to rethink the way that we use data. If you're going to make a workflow that uses data from different sources, then you have to think very carefully about how you're going to move the data from where it is to where the computational cycles are available to work on it. If data are fair, if they are accessible, if they're interoperable, then this process can in fact be automated. And there are projects such as the RDA project in the US, which is teaching workflow engines all about networks so that a complex workflow can be set up automatically. So it's not true that data can be too big to move. Data will have to be moved. But the sobering thought is that there are scientific communities who collaborate by moving data using express services, DHL and FedEx and so on. It's true that these kinds of networking have enormous bandwidth. The cliché is never underestimate the bandwidth of a 747 filled with thumb drives. And yet, given the likely future progress of network technology, you know, barring the disruptive innovation that no one can predict, if you want to move more than a couple of petabytes of data, the latency of the 747 will be less than that of any existing network. It'll be a lot more expensive, but it'll be faster. This implies that workflows are going to need data stored near where the computation is being done. Not that you don't move the data, but that the data are moved at leisure. Right? You trickle the data at 100 gigabits from one place to another for maybe days, weeks, or months to prepare for the science that you want to do. So the message I think I want to leave you with is that it used to be that you could just move the data on the network. But now moving the data has got to become an essential part of the strategy of designing an experiment, a piece of research. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ross Wilkinson from the Australian National Data Service, and I had a very entertaining coffee with Baron Munns in Paris a little while ago, and provided me with an opportunity to reflect on what has happened in Australia and then what needs to happen next, given the Cloud Initiative. So I want to spend a couple of minutes reflecting on what's happened in Australia with regard to research data, because due to some quite visionary people, Australia has been moving in this space quite hard for a fair while now. So there are two elements, I think, that of the Australian experiment in research data that I'd like to share with you. The first is the notion of collections So this is not just data that happens. This is collected data is the focus of the effort in Australia. The second thing is that we concentrated on the institutional role and professional partners in making research data happen in Australia. So two things to reflect. As a result of concentrating on collections, we have over 100,000 collections that are managed, connected, discoverable, and usable. So that's a really nice thing to have seen happen over this period of time. The second thing I'm way, way more pleased about. I know there's a few of you in the audience misguided enough to use Twitter. So I'd like you to reach out now to our colleagues in Australia. About 7 minutes ago, we launched 23 things in Australia associated with research data. So if you can type in the hashtag 23RD things, you will discover about 900 data professionals in Australia building a community. That's an extraordinary number of data professionals being put in place to recognise that data is not just technology, it's not just policy, it's not just procedure, it's people. So I prefer to measure data not in petabytes but in people. How many people do you need to look after that stuff? So I'm very pleased about that. The fact that we have institutions involved and that we have a whole bunch of professionals who will work alongside research, because I don't think it's all about transforming researchers to do research differently. It's about putting researchers next to the resources, the technical resources, but also the human resources that enable things to happen. So that's the good things. Now I want to reflect on what next. And as I say, the conversation with Barron was also had at relatively similar time to had a conversation with a bunch of publishers. Now, I know for some of you publishers is the enemy and a bad word, etc. But they have been doing reliable information for a long time. If we're going to take data seriously, data has to be reliable. And one of the key things for me about the cloud is not the techno stuff. By and large, I think Barrent and I share the lack of general interest in the techno stuff. It's incredibly important, and the fact that most of you will actually solve the techno stuff is vital to the success, but it's not all. We need to get reliability built into this environment. And so the thinking around what does publishing mean? What does it mean to say a collection of data is available in 10 years' time as evidence of the research and used for new purposes? So the challenge of reliability is one that I think in the next 11 years, Australia has in fact funding for 11 years in research infrastructure, including research data infrastructure. You know, that's a lovely, lovely thing. Thank you to the powers that be. But if we're going to use that well, we've got to move from where we're at, which is doing good things around collections, doing good things around people and institutions, doing good things around data storage, and bring that together into a reliable system for data into the future. The second thing that was very clear in every message I've heard from every public speaker is that data is not for research. Data is for research and. So one of the big challenges in my view going forward is how do we bring the public, policymakers, industry, etc., into an equation where, to date, ANZ has done a very good job, I think, of connecting research professionals with information professionals, but we have not done a good job in the next stage. So for me, the real challenge for Australia is how to connect into some of this thinking in an effective manner. And by way of passing back something, my view is having 900 people turn up to work on the information professional expertise in data management is something that I think is needed back in other parts of the community. So yes, let's embrace our technical geek. Many of us are in fact technical geeks, but recognise that we need the info geeks as well to make this work, and the institutions who will care about the value of data most effectively. Thank you.
So I was asked to give an RDA perspective on this. I had nothing to do with the preparation of the report. I just read it a few days ago. But one of the things that struck me, and it's come out in the comments here, is there's very similar missions between what the Open Science Cloud is trying to do and what RDA is trying to do. And I think Steve pointed out that there's other initiatives, other commons initiatives, other networking initiatives, other data initiatives in other countries that are all trying to do very similar sorts of things. And so the key thing is to try and bring some of those things together. Interoperability can't be, as Baron said, just within Europe. And to be honest, when I first heard about the Open Science Cloud, I was a little dismissive. And so it was really great to hear Baron say it's not a cloud. And it's really great to hear Ross say that data are people. And it's really interesting to hear Jean-Claude say that governance and the social issues are the really big challenging issues. The other thing that sort of struck me on a very related note is there's this emphasis on it being community-driven, minimal government guidance, et cetera. Very much in the spirit of RDA. And one thing that also really struck me, I'm a big fan of metaphor, as you'll probably know, is that this notion of an ecosystem of infrastructure. And that's, again, I think something what RDA is trying to do. The fact that we do not have an overarching architecture and we're letting it organically evolve really relates to that ecosystem thing. So how does RDA relate to the Open Science Cloud and all these other various initiatives, the National Data Services, and so on? I think the key thing is that these organizations, these initiatives need to take advantage of the neutral space that RDA has produced. That I think one of the greatest values that RDA has is the people, is bringing those people together and having that forum for working out issues. Honestly, I think one of the most powerful things that RDA has produced is this neutral space to bring people together to have the conversations. And so that doesn't mean that RDA should be governing this thing per se, but it's a great place to get feedback. It's a great place to test things out. It's a great place to see how things will work, not just at a technical level, but at a community level. But that's also a responsibility for RDA, I think, for the community within RDA. We need to be taking advantage of these initiatives, of these services, of these marketplace services. We need to be pushing our recommendations, our outputs, into these systems. There's a lot of talk about reference implementations. So that's great. Let's put some reference implementations out there. But as has been emphasized, it's not just a technical exercise. There's a lot of the social aspects that need to be involved, and they're usually interlinked, the social and the technical. What does a social reference implementation look like? Well, RDA is, I think, a great place to figure that out, and working with things like the Open Science Cloud. So I think there's an obvious partnership here. And the partnership needs to be multilateral. And I think that we as a community need to be playing with these things that are emerging and trying to guide them in that sort of organic, bottoms-up sort of way, preserving the right to tinker, ensuring that there is decentralization as much as possible, and any centralization really needs to be community governed. And I think I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, Mark said you're opinionated and that this is a good place for you to share your opinions. Berent is really interested in not getting questions about the cloud, but getting actual commentary back in. Sorry? So get your questions ready, and get ready to go to those microphones. But first of all, let's hear from Murasama-san.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry for taking time there. I promised my colleagues to show some slides to the audience. I would like to show some infrastructure examples in Japan. Now, this is a National Institute of Informatics effort for interconnecting the university libraries and their institutional repositories. They have more than 600 institutional repositories and archiving the article files. And working groups are starting to discuss about the data contents to contain their repositories, data management, metadata management too. Yeah, and they are thinking about more extending the visions through their backbone network. And also JST, Japan Science Technology Agency. They have their own repositories of some researchers' IDs, patents, papers, the full text journals, it's kind of the information ecosystem platform. And the interesting point is that they have also funding mechanism, funding agency division, and also information division, involving industrial partners. And National Data Library is there, so library, only one unique national library in Japan. They have been working on this, archiving the books, literatures. But they are now thinking about management of some metadata even for the data archives, the aggregation and providing the nationwide services for the overall metadata content too. Yeah, so I think that hopefully this could be a good partnership with the global construction of the infrastructure. Thank you.
Okay, sorry I was premature in jumping into this stage, but we're really interested in hearing your reactions to these observations. So do feel free to ask questions of any people on the panel, but in some sense, being opinionated is something that we're collectively good at. So this is the opportunity for you to express an opinion as to how you think this might most effectively move forward. What are the challenges you see? What are the gaps you see? Any feedback, I know Barend is keen to hear. So could you come to the microphones on either side of the stage to ask a question, express an opinion, have a brief rant? Your comments will go around the world. So, this is a really good opportunity to set a scene. And Mustafa is taking the first opportunity. Thank you.
So, thank you, Ross. Actually, I will put you under the spot, you and Barend, because I noted in the presentation from Barend on the European Science Cloud, the use of trust, the notion of trust, and it seemed to me to be reduced really or used only in the context of connectivity in terms of trust. And at the same time, Ross emphasized the importance of reliability. So I was just wondering, how do you see trust in the context of the European Science Cloud? Because in our context, trustworthiness goes beyond, when I say our context in the world data system goes beyond trust in connectivity. It's more the reliability aspect.
Should I? Okay, so I'm glad you asked the question because this was on one of my other slides. Of course, we had to stick to 5 minutes. A trusted environment really means I, as a scientist, trust that I can put my data there. And in the report that we have issued, and it's coming out very soon, we have a whole part on rules of engagement, where we say even, reliability in terms of technology, we have to rely on companies as well. I've hardly ever seen anything coming out of academia that is sustainable in the end. But being trusted also means that I trust my data with you, whether they are completely open or accessible under well-defined conditions. They could be patient data. So trust is, in our report, much more on trusted providers that may even get a sort of stamp that you are good enough. And that also allows the participation of private sector, not only public sector, okay? So I'm not talking very much about, oh, I trust my network to be up all night. That's also very good, obviously. We need that, but that's only one part.
Thank you.
Steve wants to say anything about that? Or? Okay.
I'm keen that we get some different people coming forward, so please.
So is there any plans to have the Open Science Cloud in every high school in Europe and to really bring this into high school education?
So I don't want to answer all the questions, but yeah, so I'll put the mic somewhere else then. The education part that we propose in the report is really to train these, well, 500,000 for Europe, but globally a lot more data experts, and Steve calls them cyber practitioners. We really want to separate them from data scientists and computer scientists. These are really people that help us as experimental scientists to get things right around data, from design of the experiment throughout the entire cycle. And obviously that has to start early on to convince people to go in that direction with their career, to have this at the engineering level and maybe also at master and PhD, but rather also lower. And what we also emphasize very hard in the report is those people need a career perspective, because now I have to fire them because they don't have a high age factor. And that's terrible.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I think the notion of the cyber practitioner is one that is of growing importance and growing relevance, I think, in both in Europe as well as in the US. People like this are absolutely essential to the conduct of science. They're the ones who make the codes run, who understand the computers. And it's interesting to note, I think, that the onset of portals and workflows to organize modern research, contemporary research, is causing a change in the character of the skills that are needed by people like this. So the old generation of cyber practitioners are dying out. You know, the skills with shell scripts and Tickle and TK are no longer as much in demand, and modern understanding of modern languages, RESTful interfaces are going to be essential. And the time is ripe now to undertake a program to raise people like this to professional level, to give them a career path, and to make them a recognized part of the university and research community.
A key quick observation is if we do this right, we won't have a whole bunch of old males standing up on stage like this.
Thank you. And from women.
So just, it was a comment as much as anything really, as a question, but just thinking about realistic expectations, because we were talking about two separate things here. One was infrastructure and trust, and getting all of these systems working together in a way that maybe Share is doing in the US. And then the second part is the Internet of Data and this computational analysis and getting HPC next to this infrastructure. And just in terms of expectations, I mean, the European Open Science Cloud is going to be 12, 24 months before we see some infrastructure in place that's actually pulling stuff together. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth there, but in terms of expectations about reuse of data on a systematic level and this gap in training, are we expecting to see anything fundamentally changing before 2020, do we think, or do we think these things can be done in parallel?
Well, it's on. So I think it's a tough question, of course, because in the ideal world, the answer would be from tomorrow onwards. But I think the rollout of the cloud will be a gradual process. It will be incremental. I personally advocate very hard a cautious approach, so that let it make it work at the minimal level and then build it up. because trying to solve everything at the same time will simply, it's a recipe for disaster in my personal view. So with regard to your question, the reusability of data, that underlying the question is, of course, what kind of data should be reusable all the time? And the way I see personally that the cloud is not that it is a kind of a permanent access, guaranteeing a permanent access to all the available all the time, all the data available all the time for any request. It should be a dynamic place where, according to the questions you have, the repositories upload their data into the cloud, you do your work, and then you go back. So I think there is no other way than doing it in a gradual. And by the way, on this issue of trust, it is also very important, certainly not alone in Europe, but certainly in Europe, given the whole issues of privacy and so on, that the providers of the data, and not the technical providers, but the people or the institutions which data will be used for research, trust the cloud as a secure environment, not only the researcher. Otherwise, it will not fly. If a hospital will not be guaranteed that the data they give available for a piece of research which you want to do as a researcher, that data remains according to the national laws of security and so on, it will simply not fly. So that problem as well is something to be solved up front, but also in an incremental way.
Okay, we are out of time. We're going to take 3 more questions as long as the answers are short. So question 1.
Yes. I'm Devin Donaldson. I'm an assistant professor at Indiana University in the United States. And I was just wondering if anyone could speak to how we might address the challenges regarding data sharing across language barriers. If you only know one language, that's a very, very real barrier.
So that's really for me. Because we started to work on language barriers actually in the 90s when I was shortly at the European Commission in a project called Shared in Africa and everywhere. I think that data, part of the FAIR principles is that they are mapped to universal concept identifiers, which go across languages as well, obviously. So if you annotate a picture with paludisme or with malaria, it should be the same number. And of course, when data are perfectly computer readable and actionable, which means you don't refer to concepts in your data without having a perfect identifier, then obviously they can be exported in any language you want, as long as you have those mapping tables. So I think cross-language matching is an integral part of FAIR principles.
Next, please.
Thank you for receiving the words. I'm active in the Agriculture Data Interest Group, and I'm also observing the European calls on innovation partnerships, also e-infrastructures for quite a while now. And one of the sentences that one of you said in one of your presentations is, hell is other people's data. So for me, it's open science cloud sounds really nice, and maybe as a vision into the future, it's very realistic probably. But when I look into the reality of how data are provided from research projects, there need to be a hell of a lot of initiatives to support researchers to pre-process the information so that it can be used by others. When we look into the real data world in our European research area, there are many incentives to produce data, yes. There are many reference materials existing to help researchers to translate, to transform their data set so that it can be used by an international community, for example, but it's not happening. And in many cases, research infrastructures are built, but they lack data centers or like kind of mediators that put information together so it can be actually used by others. So maybe for a group of small, highly specialized experts knowing about spatial modeling, all kinds of things, they can utilize this, but the majority of a normal human kind of standard researchers is not capable. And even excellent centers that are built, increasingly built in various countries in Europe don't have the infrastructure, are not building the infrastructure to provide and also utilize information and mediate and make it possible. So I think it's a nice visionary kind of academic exercise now, and would be great if there would be like membership, European or even global initiatives that think of this kind of in-between to actually make it possible. Thank you.
I'm sure Ross wants to say things about that as well. We have very strongly emphasized that the entire incentive scheme has to change, and that's a daunting task. So if it doesn't mean anything to my dean, I won't do it. And currently there is absolutely no incentive for data sharing in the academic world. So that's one of the major issues we put forward in the report. And then assist stupid biologists like me to do it right, because I won't know how to do it. That's why we need these people, the cyber practitioners or the data experts. But it's a matter of time. We cannot just snap our finger and change the horrible situation as it is today, where we found out in the US that only 12% of the research supported by NIH ends up in a trusted repository. Imagine. So we lose billions of dollars every year. It's terrible. We cannot change that overnight, but we will, over time.
It is absolutely true that funding agencies traditionally have not provided funds for managing data. That's got to change.
So this is where policy equals the other leg of this place. This won't succeed as a technical infrastructure unless the human policy and procedures are in place. So those of you who are here from a policy perspective, this is in fact an opportunity in my view. Final question, please.
Thank you very much. It's Ramin Tanati from University of Southampton. It's really a question between the actual data being shared and the analytics that sit on top of it. And my question really sort of relates to, you provide an infrastructure to share data and to actually gain access from various different data stores. But is the Open Science Data Initiative also going to be providing the analytical layer on top? Because there's one thing about having data sets and reusability, but depending on the analytics you provide on it, you're going to be providing different answers. And we've come across this in various different research projects I'm involved in. So is the Open Data Science Cloud, I mean, in short, going to be providing a place where you provide analytics and reusable analytics as well?
Again, you know, it was too short to mention all this, but we have even debated in the group to call it the Internet of Research Objects, where it clearly includes all the analytics and workflows. And we are totally in agreement with what was said at the first FAIR data meeting by Carol Goebel, good friend of us. In this day, you cannot separate the analytics from the data, because machines have to take care of them, and they are our important research assistants. And one of the major mistakes people make is mixing up also tooling for machines with tooling for people. People want to read, and what is a hell for a computer, reading text, is horrible, it's a nightmare, and for us, RDF is a nightmare, you know, for example. So we need to support both sides. That's my little cartoon of mind-machine interaction, but we shouldn't mix those things. But research, sustainable and reusable workflows are key to reproducibility, of course, and trust.
Thanks all. Mark made a plea that we work out how to get the most effective engagement between the Research Data Alliance and this major initiative. Can I suggest that you spend some time thinking about this and talk to these fine people over the next couple of days? And if you don't get a chance to talk to them, send them an email or a tweet. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you to all the panelists. For those of you who are not following on Twitter, I have well noted your point about the gender balance on the panel. Okay, so I take that very well. A few housekeeping. Yeah, but that doesn't cut it, I'm afraid. Yeah, not to worry. Just very quickly, two very quick points to make to you. One is somebody may have taken away a translation, a simultaneous translation, white number 10 with them yesterday. It's missing, so please check your bags if you had a little machine and you didn't give it back. And the other thing is to highlight, please make our life easy for us and your chairs in the sessions please log in to the RDA website and click which session that you're in on the breakout session so that we have participant lists, okay? But it takes 1 minute of your time. Many of you don't do it, and it's such a shame. Okay, so please, we facilitated it that way, and don't forget to vote. Okay, thank you.